Hello, welcome to Recapping with Delora
and Ashley.
Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Recapping Podcast.
Also, comment, rate, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all the things.
We would love to hear your ratings of the movies and shows we review.
Email us your audio file to recappingpodcast@gmail.com and we will play it during the show.
Or DM us on Instagram and we will post and read it on air.
Thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you.
Delora, new week. What's going on, sis?
Oh, I'm living the dream. How about you?
Same. As long as I'm breathing, I feel like I'm good to go these days. So we're going to keep that energy. Guys, we teased it last week. If you have not listened to our Hot Topics and Headlines episode, it was fun. Go back and check it out. But it is time to recap a little known series. I'm just kidding. Euphoria, guys. This is a much talked about show on HBO Max starring our girl Zendaya. Might have won a little thing called an Emmy for her performance in season 1 on this. Might have made history. Ever. Yeah, might have made a little history. But it's 2 seasons, both 8 episodes long, kind of hour-longish episodes. The first season started all the way back in June of 2019, so pre-pandemic. And then the second season debuted in January of this year. There were 2 hour-long specials, one of which we microdosed, that were created to kind of bridge the gap.
Yes.
Because production was delayed again by the pandemic for season 2. So I mentioned it also at the end of our last show, but according to HBO, per an article by Elle, Euphoria is the channel's second most watched show since 2004, behind GOT, Game of Thrones, another little show Delora and I may have consumed.
We love so much.
We
except
reference
for the
it.
final season.
Yeah, we reference it a lot on this podcast.
And we'll continue to, because it was a moment.
And I'm excited for the House of Targaryen, House of Dragons, but we'll get there. The show averages about 16 million viewers per episode. Nothing to sneeze about in this day and era of so much competition and consumption. It's also the most tweeted about show of the decade to date in the US, with 34 million tweets, according to Variety. So let's get into a quick summary. An American adaptation of the Israeli show of the same name, Euphoria follows a group of high school students as they navigate love and friendships in a world of drugs, sex, trauma, and social media. Creator and director Sam Levinson. Cast, it's a little large, so I'm still going to try to hit the biggies, but you guys bear with me. As I already mentioned, we have our girl Zendaya, shout out to Zendaya, as Rue.
Whoop, whoop.
We have Hunter Schafer as Jules. We have Alexa Demi as Maddie, Sydney Sweeney as Cassie, Maud Apatow as Lexi, Barbie Ferreira as Kat, Jacob Elordi as Nate, Angus Cloud as Fezco, Eric Dane as Cal, Javon Walton as Ashtray, Algie Smith as McKay, Storm Reed as Gia, Nika King as Leslie, Coleman Domingo as Ali, Austin Abrams as Ethan, Dominic Fike as Elliot, and Alana Ubek as Suze. Reviews, Rotten Tomatoes, 88% critic score, 86% audience score, and 92% of Google users gave this show a thumbs up. Delora, what's your grade for Euphoria?
Oh, Ashley, this one's tough because this show doesn't bring me joy.
It's very heavy.
It is so heavy. What I will say is this. It is the actors, okay, phenomenal. I do feel like there are moments of indulgence in terms of like how dramatic some things are, you know what I mean? But visually it is stunning, especially in the second season. But I'm gonna have to give it a B, just because I kind of sometimes reluctantly watch it because it could be a lot. I don't dare binge this show, even though we had to rewatch it for this recap. But on a regular basis, yeah, no, it's one episode at a time. That's all I can take. In today's world, in today's adulting, and these are high school. These are high school kids. Okay,
so much. But we're on the exact same page. I gave this a B2. I struggled. The grade was the last thing that I wrote down today because I'm like, what can I give this? Yeah. I agree with you. It's such an emotional roller coaster. And guys, I was telling Delora before we hopped on the mic, only for the love of the pod, when I tell y'all I rewatched and binged these first 2 seasons within 48 hours, emotionally exhausted. Okay. It's seriously frightening to imagine kids having to deal with so much while still in high school.
Girl.
But this cast, to your point, they just do such an amazing job. Like, you cannot overlook the stellar acting that they pull out to bring these characters and all their drama and trauma to life, right? To your point, the cinematography, which was so intentional, really adds so much to the story and to the way that they want to tell the story. And, you know, it's based on Sam Levinson's own experiences. So to some degree, this is a depiction of something that people have gone through, are currently going through, will go through, even if it's not you or I's experience, you know? And again, Zendaya, history making, Emmy award winning for this first season. And let's be honest, she's likely going to get another one for episode 5 alone. She's likely going to get another one, but it was intense. So it's a B for me. All right. Spoiler alert. If you guys have not watched yet, this is a good point to stop and come back to us once you have, but let's move forward. As I mentioned in last week's episode, I'm going to give kind of a high level overview of season 1, and then Delora and I are going to talk more in depth about season 2. So as we've already stated, Euphoria is not for the faint of heart. These are high school kids going through insane life situations that makes, in my opinion, content that's not exactly ideal for that demographic to consume.
No, I'm a woman in her 30s, and I'm like, I don't know how kids younger than, you know, me watch this and be like, oh yeah, entertainment. Oh my goodness, I want those nails. Like,
it's so much. And again, we are older. We're both in our 30s. So I guess we're looking at it from more of a parental than peer perspective, which, you know, is valuable. But I just feel like it's so much. But I'm just saying in terms of like, I feel like we take it as like, this is traumatic to witness because we also feel a level of protection over people who are younger than us that I think their own peer group may not feel, right? So when I see Rue, I'm thinking like, I want to protect this child. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so, because I had the same experience, my hairdresser's 15-year-old daughter, 16-year-old daughter was telling me how she watches this. And I'm thinking like, how? This is way too much. We didn't have shows like this when we were in high school that I can remember ever consuming, you know?
No, I watched Ugly Betty on ABC, and it was a big deal when he started. Well, no, I was an adult when Scandal came out, but still, no. Grey's Anatomy.
There's so much for kids to deal with that even we didn't have to deal with because we didn't have the advent of social media yet. We didn't have technology to the degree that it is now. So I think that adds a different level and layer to it too. But our main character and series narrator, Rue, is a high school junior who's an addict. And although she started the season coming out of rehab, she had no real intentions of sobriety. Now, looking back as I rewatched, I appreciated the history we got in season 1 on Rue. She didn't just start drugs out of the blue or because it was what her friends were doing. She got hooked on opioids as a child when she was diagnosed very young with multiple potential mental health disorders, and it really just spiraled from there. She's someone who seeks it out for a few seconds of peace, it seems like, because living for her is really painful. She's also struggling with grief from the death of her father from cancer. But her mother and her sister Gia were honestly the biggest casualties to her issues. Those scenes were really, really painful to sit through. The circle of high school kids around Rue, her sort of BFF Lexi, toxic ass Nate, football star McKay, besties Maddie and Cassie, cam girl Kat, drug dealer Fezco, and the object of Rue's affections, Jules, all have their own issues to deal with. Now, guys, the most consuming storyline for me in season 1, other than Rue, is we find out very early that Nate's father is a closeted gay man who likes to hook up with men and underage Jules, who's transgender, in motel rooms, which he secretly filmed and kept on DVDs. Nate discovered his collection at 11 and then subsequently turned into the monster that he is today.
He is the spawn of Satan.
Seriously.
Nate, I don't know how Jacob does it. It's the darkness over Nate. That's insane.
He's a scary person. I don't even know if Nate half the time knows how Nate's going to react to something. I had even forgotten in season 1, he had this whole fit. Him and his dad were fighting in one episode. He literally starts banging his head on the floor and has a whole fit. Scares his father so bad his father goes to the other room and closes the door. Terrifying.
Dysfunctional across the board.
He ends up deciding to catfish, then attempt to blackmail Jules for child porn. That in and of itself would be enough for many shows, Delora, but nah, right? Because Nate has a super toxic on and off relationship with his girlfriend.
You know what it reminds me of a little bit? The Life of the American Teenager or something like that. I remember trying to watch, Dave and I tried to watch it. It was the beginning of our relationship. We were still very, very much young, trying to find our show. And we tried to watch the show. And it was like one thing after another. And we're like, this is too many issues. I thought that show was a lot. But like that Euphoria was like, hold my beer.
Yeah.
Hold my underage drinking beer.
I'm going to give everybody some of the most brutal possible issues that society has to cope with. I mean, that's really what this show has culminated into, right? Because I was mentioning Nate has a super toxic on and off relationship with his girlfriend, Maddie.
Yes.
Who even lies for him when he choked her at a carnival and left bruises. And instead of facing the consequences, Nate blackmails Jules to lie and then pins it on a guy Maddie had sex with at a party who he'd already brutally assaulted. The season ended on kind of a weird musical note, and with Jules leaving Rue behind and running off to the city, quote unquote, which I'm assuming is supposed to be LA. They never really specify. But what stood out for you in season 1, Delora?
It would ultimately be the introduction of all the characters, you know, specifically Rue, trying to understand her, trying to empathize with her, which was much easier in season 1 than it is in season 2, which we'll get there. And just seeing how all these characters intertwine with one another, you know, and yeah, of course, being a super fan of Grey's Anatomy, to find Sloane in this show in such a raw way, I was like, ooh, come through. What is it called? Range. Come through range. You know what I mean?
He was a deeply, deeply flawed man.
Yeah, but he still is so fine.
Well, that's what even one of his, lovers says when they come to the motel room, like, oh, you're actually cute. You're actually hot.
But sometimes it'd be the crazy ones, right? They lure you in.
One thing that I noticed about Cal in my second watch too is Cal comes off as intimidating, but he's actually much more gentle than in comparison, especially to his son.
His own son. And that says a lot because he's intense too. Deeply
disturbing in many ways. But yeah, in that way, that was something I noted more strongly, was that Cal presents as being more dangerous and all of that. But when push comes to shove, he does not resort to violence the way that his son does. Even when, I'm not sure if you remember the scene where in season 1, Jules, to prove to Rue that Cal was the man she encountered in the motel room, goes over to his stand at the carnival. And Cal looks completely shocked to see her because he didn't know that she was a high school student. He didn't know she lived there.
Yep.
And so he ends up dropping chili and making kind of a little bit of a scene. And then he comes and finds her. And what you kind of think as a viewer is, oh, maybe he's going to try to hurt her in some way. But he comes so like tail in between his legs, head down, like, oh my God, I know you have the power to destroy me, but please don't do that. Whereas we just saw such a violent encounter that Nate had with his girlfriend, Maddie, because of her, reaction to coming over, calling his mother the C word, which was crazy.
Well, if you think about the difference between Kyle and Nate, Kyle has so much to lose. He built, this persona over the years. He's a businessman. He's a family man. He's all those things. Nate is just a terrorizer because he has literally nothing to lose.
I think that's such a great point. And I also think it's almost like because of everything that Cal did, which Cal was control of, he created his own monster. Like he created a monstrous version of himself without even meaning to. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And that, again, it's just something I picked up on even more because Cal did seem more intimidating to me the first time I was watching the series. And then I realized he's all bark and no bite behind it, So otherwise, I agree with you. I really like that
he also has remorse and guilt. And that's something I don't think Nate is going to ever grow into.
I don't know what Nate has, bro. I'm telling you, every episode, I'm like, I don't know what this man is going to do today. I don't know what he's thinking today. I'm not even sure he does. He's a terrifying character to me because I can't gauge his motivations for everything he does. That's the scariest thing.
So true. That is so true.
Yeah. But I was rooting for Jules and Rue to figure it out in season 1. I loved the slow burn of their relationship, how they were friends. They got to know each other. There was such a sweetness to their dynamic that, again, I caught more on my second thing. Like the way they talk to each other, the way they interact with each other was so innocent and sweet compared to all the other insanity that's going on in the series.
Mm-hmm. And Kat was my girl. Granted, these people are way too young, but I just love the self-discovery of it all, trying to find her way in her body and her sexuality as a woman, her femininity, her power. I appreciated that.
She owned it, honey.
Yes.
And going on this whole journey of seeing her start the season so kind of in herself and insecure, and then the wardrobe changes and the mindset kind of changes. I think that's something she has to work on. I think the outer shell was changing quicker than the inner shell, the real internal struggle she was going through with like self-love. But I agree with you. It was fascinating to watch. Do I encourage other high school girls to start cam accounts?
No.
And then of course, Fezco, a character I did not think I was going to love as much as I've loved.
A drug dealer with a heart of gold?
With a heart of freaking gold. And a intense little baby brother in tow. I mean, it was fascinating.
First of all, Ash is everything in season 2, first of all. And I say that because I don't think I realized how badass he was in season 1. I don't think it was, he was always intense, but like,
well, I feel like the device that Sam Levinson used in season 2 to make him more intense was he rarely spoke. And that's something, again, I didn't think about. Till my second watch, I was like, he used to talk way more when he was younger and littler on the show. And now y'all got him mute and it's making him terrifying. So let's go ahead and move on to season 2, because if we thought season 1 was intense, season 2 was a horror show. Okay. Now, usually Delora and I kind of break these series down episode by episode, but with this series, we want to continue to just kind of talk about storylines and elaborate on the characters for the season, right? So let's start with our girl Rue. She completely spirals in season 2. She centered her sobriety in season 1 on being better for Jules. So obviously that shit went left when Jules did.
Exactly. And that's a dangerous game to play, especially when entering a relationship with somebody who might have sobriety problems, or you don't want to be a trigger or an act, not you necessarily be a trigger, but your actions indirectly causing a trigger to happen that would cause them to spiral like Rue did.
And Ali tried to warn her about that dynamic and about the fact that, what happens when she leaves and says she, you know, just wants to be friends when you guys kind of separate out of high school. Because again, they're in high school and the impermanence of that and those relationships is very real, right? And we also saw in those hour-long episodes that Jules has had to deal with addiction from her mother. So this was not necessarily a good cycle for Jules to have to repeat either in her personal life.
That codependency is very dangerous and toxic.
Exactly. And unfortunately, it really seemed like Rue was seeking oblivion at this point. It was terrifying to watch. She went so far in this season as to start selling drugs for a scarily calm middle-aged lady named Lori, who was dealing and seemed like by the end of episode 5 that she wanted to pimp Zendaya out to get her return on her investment.
It's like, what in the Breaking Bad is this? Because I was done when she said, oh, I used to be a teacher. And it was like, there ain't no money in that.
Girl, she got me when she said, I don't think I've ever been angry. What you mean you ain't never been angry? You sound crazy as hell to me. I don't know what type of life you're living and how that's even remotely possible, ma'am, but clearly you're not someone I want to cross. Episode 5, guys, was the absolute wildest episode of Rue's journey. How did you feel, Delora, about Rue in season 2 in terms of her addiction as well as the impact on her relationships?
It was a tough watch. It was a tough watch. She was tap dancing on my nerves. As I mentioned previously, as an audience member, I was rooting for Rue, especially in season 1. I saw in an interview that Zendaya talked about understanding that they were pushing the boundaries of what people would probably put up with, but understanding and having the empathy in Rue to present Rue even in her ugliest state, right? Because the going off on the mama and the sister situation, I mean, the kicking down the freaking door. And my deal is, it's like, I know she was high out of her mind, but it's like, you didn't think it was a good idea to tell your mom that you owe a lot of money for that cases of drugs. Like and she kept iterating, oh, I want to be a good person. What is this fascination of being a good person? Like, is that the only thing you can lean on in hopes of sobriety? I guess, you know, thank God I'm not her mama. So that's all I got to say. Because the way she pushed the buttons on Ali,
almost took that man outside of himself. Almost took him outside of himself.
Will Smith was rising on the inside.
Not Will Smith. Don't do that.
I'm sorry, he was right there.
How you gonna do that to your boy? How you gonna do that?
My boy, I'm so sorry, Will.
Get it, Ali? You get that? You see what you did there?
You know, I love D'Amico too. He is phenomenal. And I feel like I didn't get enough of him in season 2, by the way. He was so everything in season 1. What about you?
Man, I think if this character had been played by anybody else other than someone that I loved as an actress, I might have tapped out, because Rue was completely out of control this season. And it took me, again, going back and rewatching, to remember just how much I had loved her in season 1, despite her struggle. She was still so sweet. She completely loses that for me in season 2, because she gets goes deep in fentanyl. She's doing heroin, guys. She's doing, I think, pretty much anything she can get her hands on. The only reason why she ended up going to Lori to try to sell drugs is so she could do more drugs. You know what I mean? Like, she was so deep within the throes of her addiction that she told them when she finally got kind of caught up that, you know, if y'all had not gotten to me in this moment and taken this from me, I was probably about a month away from killing myself. And that was so sobering to watch, because again, she's in high school. She's 17. So it was definitely hard to deal with. And in terms of how it impacted her relationships, her mother's a saint, because I think she only physically got kind of physical with her and all of her craziness once. You know what I'm saying? And that took a lot of willpower for everything that Rue was kind of doing, between the back and forth with her, the back and forth with Gia. And Gia absolutely destroyed my heart in this season, because I saw that there was damage done in season 1. But in season 2, I'm like, Gia is never going to recover from this. This is going to impact her personal relationships for the rest of her life.
It was so funny because the way her mom screamed at her and said, "I'm not afraid of you." It was one of those things where it was almost like she was rebuking a demon, because it was like, I am going to stand up to you, even if my faith is as small as this mustard seed. This mountain is about to be removed. Okay. Like, I am not afraid of you. She was like, I will not be moved by this craziness. You got to get out my freaking house. And there was a lot of people who were upset that she flat out told Rue, if it's between you and your sister, I'm choosing your sister.
Yeah, but I wanted to move on to that scene to ask how you felt about that, because I was at the point, obviously, where she felt like, you know what, Rue, you're gonna do what you're gonna do. You're almost out of my house. You don't even know what your sister's going through because you're so selfish. You don't even pay attention. All you think about is you. And so I'm done. I'm over it.
It is. If you think about it, it is a very much a selfish act, right? It's all about you and your next high.
I was on her mother's side again. I thought her mother had been a saint throughout the series, with kind of the way she dealt with everything in these moments. And again, I was looking at this from more of a parental lens. So I can only imagine what it has to be like for her as a single mother to have to deal with everything she's dealing with, trying to raise her 2 daughters. And then, Rue lying. And that was another thing. These parents gave these kids way too much freedom, because the way they was ripping and running these streets, the way that I feel like, even I think it was in season 1, Rue said something like, I don't know why you think I need to tell you everything I have going on in my life, when she came up at like 5 a.m. Like, sis, who are you talking to? Whose house are you walking in right now? I don't know what you thought this was, but you better get your shit together before you out my house. I will put you out my house like the mama did on Atlanta. I don't know what you think this is.
Oh, and that little boy was what, 12?
Girl. Like, you got those mamas, right? So like, be thanking your stars in this series, Rue, that this is the mother you had, because she was put up with a lot. So let's move on to Rue and Jules. They try to make a real go at their relationship this season when Jules returns over the holidays. But again, things got really ugly due to Rue's drug usage, and then a love triangle with fellow druggie Elliot. Did you feel for Rue when Jules began cheating on her with Elliot, or did you feel like Jules deserved better?
It was messy, but I didn't feel bad, because where was Rue? Somewhere getting high somewhere. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but she was already tired of what was going on, and I guess Elliot was there. You know what I mean?
I kind of felt like Elliot was just a body. Like, I feel bad to say it that way, but I almost feel like he was just a warm.
Like, for both of them, though.
Yeah, he was just kind of like a warm place to kind of find some comfort in those moments where, Rue was so high out of her mind, she couldn't enjoy like sexual moments with Jules that she was having. And so Jules started feeling insecure about that, and already thought that Rue and Elliot may have had something going on. Because again, they did have this big secret from her, which is that they were doing drugs together. So I have to agree with you. I think at this point, I didn't really care, because I also was like, Rue, do you really care?
I don't think she did. I think she only cared about that suitcase.
Which was a huge departure from season 1 Rue, and the level of not even obsession, but the level of passion she felt for and about Jules. Do you think that the two of them will ever get back together, or is this the end for this couple following Jules' involvement in the intervention at the end of the season that broke them up?
I think this is it. It's an unhealthy situation. I guess I'm trying to think of a time where there was a show that showed a relationship that was built on such sandy foundation. Like, there's nothing solid about the relationship outside of their initial attraction. Like, in my opinion, like, yes, their connection was sweet and wonderful, in the beginning, but too many major things have happened that I don't know if they have to get over it, because at the end of the day, they are so young. They're so young. You understand what I'm trying to say here?
Absolutely understand. Again, I was rooting for them in season 1 because it was the start of their love story. It was still fairly innocent. We're still working through both of their own individual traumas, let alone the trauma that they were kind of inflicting on each other at the end of the day. Because, Rue makes a point, even though she's crazy out of her mind because of the intervention situation, to say, Jules, you left me at my lowest moment. I think she really, really meant that. I think it really hit her hard kind of when Jules decided to leave and go on without her. And so I think by this point, Delora, I'm on the same page as you, maybe someday, but I don't know if it's going to live within the history of this show for them to need to get back together unless we skip ahead some years, unless we see some evolution in both of these young ladies' lives, not just Rue, but also in Jules, because I feel like Jules, at the end of the season, it kind of made it seem like she was more interested in getting back with Rue than Rue was, as if Rue could kind of move past it. But I don't think that's good for Jules. I think Jules needs to also come to the point where she realizes, hey, I need to let her go work out her own ish. And I need to figure out mine. Because again, Jules is still transitioning and kind of going through her figuring out who she is and conquer femininity, as she said, and all these things. So there's a lot to unpack with Jules as well. I know the focus is so much more on Rue. But maybe someday, Delora, maybe post-college.
How many seasons do you think the show will get, though?
I don't think it's going to be within the history of this show that they need to get back together. That's what I'm saying. I think it's going to be sometime in some future, maybe.
I give this show probably 2 more seasons max.
I think it depends on how much more Sam is going to give us. That's this. Like he has said.
It's so intense. It's like you can't keep this
amount. It's unsustainable. It's unsustainable.
Yes.
And so he said previously, he said previously, like this show can be so many things. And so again, in season 1, we got some of the darkness, but there were still such a sweetness. So season 2 was very dark. So if he continues down this path, I agree with you. But I think if somehow we're able to get more moments of levity and add in some layers, then I think it could go for a little bit longer than 2 more seasons.
And we did get some of that levity in season 2. We'll get there, I'm sure. But...
Oh, we're absolutely going to get there. Absolutely. Because it's my favorite part of season 2 by far. So Nate's dad, Cal, finally reveals his truth and decides to leave his family. But Nate said, nah, bruh, you don't get to go live happily ever after. Okay. Turned his ass in for child pornography. Had a little flash drive. Why did he bring the gun? I'm still not sure. Maybe he thought about using it again. I can never tell with Nate. But how'd you feel, Delora, about Cal's behavior and confession to his family? Let's start there. And then secondarily, did you agree with Nate's decision to turn in his father? So give me both parts.
So to your point earlier, when it comes to him building, him being Frankenstein to his suburban life, it's not surprising that he just decided to burn the shit down, like burn it all down. Literally, the F's were no longer given. Like, you know what I mean? Like they were gone. When I
first watched, I was like, does he have brain damage from Ash knocking him in the head so many times with that gun? Like, I was really struggling at first with like, where did this just sudden flip of the switch happen in your mind?
I think it was a long time coming. And I just felt like in some ways the wife probably knew. I think the only blindsided person was probably Nate's older brother. But even then, this is what happens when you don't talk things out and you repress everything. I mean, he's calling out the older brother for his porn addiction. You know what I mean? Like, it was just insane. But
the only thing he didn't do was light the house on fire. That's the only thing he didn't do.
And he knew his wife was going to kill him if he had. And I think that's probably why he didn't do it. And again, to that point, I feel like the wife always probably knew something. You know what I mean? Even if she didn't know the whole truth, because they didn't even seem to really bat too many eyes when he was gone. Her interaction with Nate and even her, like, maybe they were too busy mourning, I guess, him leaving and being like, okay, I guess he's really gone. But even his mom, Nate's mom, saw the darkness in him, because in that interaction, they just seemed so like, oh, your dad's gone and you got some of him in you and it's this darkness, and he's flipped on her so quickly. Oh, it was gross. But his YOLO life, not surprising. He's around that sweet age of a midlife crisis, and for someone who dealt with his sexuality, he probably just was over it and just was very indulgent.
I also feel like he might have just realized this is going to come out one way or another because my disc is gone. So this is out here now, and I don't know when it's going to come back and get me, but it's going to come.
That's a great point. But yeah, I didn't know if Nate was going to do it, but I guess he hated his dad enough to do it, right? So
he said, I want revenge.
But it had to happen. He was very much guilty, regardless of how remorseful he might have been. He did a lot of sick stuff for a lot of years.
I'm curious to see how.
And what I mean by that is, how many underage people did he have?
Yeah. And that's the point right there, right? Is while we're only hearing about Jules, Nate has seen probably every video in his collection. And I don't think he included Jules in the flash drive, which means there had to be other underage minors who were on those DVDs, right? So to your point, it was the ethical and moral thing to do. But I also wonder how this is going to blow back on Nate, because Nate is not an angel, as we've already discussed. And he's committed crimes over the course of these 2 seasons, right? So how is that karma going to come back to hit your ass?
Is it gonna be enough good karma to cancel it off?
Absolutely not, because we still have to get to one particularly horrific scene between him and Maddie. But before we do, I just have to say that I appreciate you thinking about his wife, because I have to be honest with you, I didn't even really give his wife a second thought in those moments. Like, I appreciated the flashback that we had to his high school experience and to how he was at the early stages of figuring out his sexuality when he found out she was pregnant and kind of did what he felt like he needed to do at the time. Mm-hmm. But I didn't give her a second thought after that. So I am curious as to how Marcia responded and will continue to respond in season 3 with this news, especially once he gets arrested, right? Because his empire is about to come collapsing down. We didn't talk about this. Cal and his family are wealthy. Cal has established real estate businesses and all this stuff. Like, he owns, like, I think half of the town.
Yep.
So all this stuff is about to come crashing down. So what does that mean for the lifestyle that they're used to? What does that mean for the stability? And then, Delora, one of the biggest mysteries of the Jacobs family, where is this third son? I'm not sure how many people peep this. There are 3 sons in their family photo. We only see about 2.
That's an excellent point. How old is he? Is he the middle child?
I'm not sure. We've only seen the family picture with Nate, his brother, another brother, the mom and the dad. Never elaborated further, but where is this third kid? I need that tea. I need that tea, Euphoria. All right. So, as I was mentioning, one of the most horrific scenes for me personally in season 2, Nate wanting to get the disc back goes to Maddie's house because Maddie took it from his house in season 1. Did you feel like the ends justified the means when he, to get this disc back, held a gun first to her head, then his head, and what was essentially supposed to be basically Russian roulette with one bullet while he continued to pull the trigger? Did the ends justify the means? Because then he goes and gives it to Jules and makes it seem like he had to do what he had to do.
Girl, this question is way too hard. I don't know, because what he did to Maddie is inexcusable. Like, he keeps abusing this girl and she keeps letting him in her. Well, I don't think she let him in the second time, but I don't know, Ashley. I really don't, because that scene was so insane. I'm surprised she didn't pee on herself. Like, you know what I
mean? Or throw up or something. Like, I definitely would have had a physical, I know she started crying, so she did have a physical reaction, but it was so much. And I feel like Nate knows Maddie's psychology so well, which is terrifying to me. Like, I don't think that you want a psychopath of that caliber to really know the best ways to push your buttons. Because obviously he knew, listen, even holding this gun to your head is not the most trauma I can cause you. It's holding the gun to my head that's going to be the thing. Like, if I killed myself right here while I'm on you, that's going to be the worst thing I could possibly do. It was terrifying. It was disgusting and terrifying.
I guess I just don't understand their relationship. It just was so toxic around, like, all around, you know?
But at that age, and given the backstory of Maddie and how her parents have a dysfunctional marriage and things like that, she thought that it was really love. It had become so toxic because in season 1, their relationship, he was really sweet when the relationship started.
Yeah.
He was putting flowers in her locker every day, telling her he'd protect her, all this stuff. And then the real Nate came out, the violence came out, the abuse came out, the back and forth came out. And not saying that Maddie is a saint, but she damn sure didn't deserve the way that Nate treated her over the course of these 2 seasons.
Not at all.
Now, one other Nate question. Do you think he has genuine feelings for Jules? Because it is heavily implied multiple times with after the whole catfishing situation that he really did fall for her.
That was an interesting situation because I don't know if we've ever seen, I don't know if he's capable of that level of vulnerability. I think it probably was all of his odd. I know you mentioned him being sweet to, you know, Maddie and things of the last season, but I just don't trust him at all. At all.
As you should not. And as Jules doesn't. That's why when she went and got that dish, she had a switchblade in her sleeve.
Yeah.
Because the first time he ever met her, guys, he threatened violence. He didn't even know who she was, but he was so amped up at this party that he was talking about, who the F is this? Does anybody know her? Da, 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 da. Somebody get her out of here before I hurt her. He was a psych, guys. He's psyched. Listen, I'm going to move on. We got to see backstory. Oh, I'm sorry. One more thing I want to say. I think if he does have genuine feelings for Jules, he suppresses it because he's afraid of being anything like his father in terms of his sexuality.
Yep.
Okay.
I can see that. But that's my deal. I'm like, why did you watch? I mean, as a kid, I guess you do things that aren't necessarily quote unquote rational, right? But did he have a thing for watching his dad and his partners?
I think that's a big question. I think it may more so be that, to his point, he felt like he needed to protect his father. So maybe he felt like he needed to see the evidence to know what he was protecting his father from. But at the same time, I do think he struggles to make sure that if he is anything like his father, he completely suppresses it. So we get to see the backstory also on Fezco and how he got in the drug game thanks to his badass grandmother. He nearly beat Nate to death to start this season, formed a budding romance with Lexi, but by season's end gets caught up and shot in a shootout at his house between the feds and adopted little brother and fellow child drug dealer Ashtray. Ash had murdered their drug connect mouse to start the season, and his sidekick Custer ended up cooperating with authorities and trying to get a confession. But Faye was Team Fez, and Ash committed another homicide, killing Custer too. Delora, it was so much with Fez and Co. I know his name is Fezco, but Fez and Co. this season. How'd you feel about Fez's journey? Did you ship him and Lexi?
Yeah. So Fez's grandmother, first of all, was everything. I mean, the introduction to her was just like, yes, ma'am. Big ovary energy for sure. You know, Fez is an interesting character. Obviously, he's a drug dealer, right? And he kind of does it because it's the family business. Although I did not blame him from opening up that door, not opening up the door for Rue for season 1, because she has to learn somewhere. I absolutely did ship him and Lexi just because I wasn't expecting it. And to your point, with this show, there was a level of sweetness about their connection with one another. But at the same time, he is very much a drug dealer.
That part.
Counting bodies and making deals. It's a lot. It's a lot, Ashley. So everybody deserves love.
Listen, I think everybody shipped Lexi and Fezco because to your point, they had such a great connection. I felt like he was so different than the other male peers she probably had available to her in school.
And he understood her and respected her, which is something I'm sure the boys at the school did not do for her.
The only other guy I was thinking about for her this season is after Ethan and Kat broke up, and I was like, hey, maybe Ethan would be a better fit for Lexi, or maybe they'd be boring as hell together. I don't know. But I wanted better for Lexi with my 30-something-year-old eyes, right? Like,
absolutely. Oh yeah.
I don't want you to go down this path, sis.
Never go with the drug
dealer.
dealer.
Him almost beat another kid to death. That was a lot.
But that was funny though, because he went from having that sweet, what they call caking or whatever, to be like, okay, that was good. Let me smoke my cigarette. Here's a bottle. Whap!
I mean, but I remember when we first started the season, because again, it had been some years since I watched season 1. I was like, wow, that was extremely violent. And then I had forgotten how Nate had beaten Tyler, who Maddie had slept with in season 1, so horribly, the same way he got beaten up, that it again just removed any empathy I had for Nate with you almost dying. Like I forgot about the ways in which that karma was obviously coming back on you. Did you foresee that ending that we got for Fezco and for Ash?
In some ways, yes. They are drug dealers. Stacking up bodies. Something is going to happen, whether it was Laura and her people or the feds. It was just bound to happen. It was bound to happen.
I was so on pins and needles during this finale, guys. I was telling Delora before we hopped on the mic that I feel like the finale got to me even more my second watch, because when Fez was screaming, Ash, 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 it was giving me heart palpitations for him to scream my name in this like horrific sequence of seeing this child in a shootout with the police, right? It was reportedly changed at the last minute, though, according to the actor who plays Ashtray. It was originally supposed to be Fez, and not Ash, who dies, right? Even though we see Fez get shot, right? So we still assume that there's a possibility that Fez did not make it, but Ash got one between the ass. So
no, I'm saying there were people who were trying to speculate online on whether
about Ash.
Yeah,
Ash is dead, guys. Let's not play this game. Let's not. Fez, I think, is gonna make it.
Young to be like, no, let me just go ahead and do my thing. I don't want to go to jail. I'm like, yo.
I think what it is, again, the same way I say with Nate and his father, I feel like, unfortunately, Ash is the worst version of Fez. Like, at least Fez had a little period of time in his young life where he was normal and probably lived more of a normal life. Ash never stood a chance. His mother left him with Fez's grandmother as collateral as a baby and never came back. Okay. That kid did not stand a chance. But it's so sad. I mean, he went out and what I said in that final scene, I said, oh, this is some set it off shit. Like, my guy said, I'm going out in this bathtub like a G. Like
the Queen Latifah.
Seriously. Absolutely the scene that I'm talking about, Delora. Absolutely. I think inevitably for me, I definitely saw there had to be some repercussions, especially because Ash had just kind of started murdering, willy-nilly, killed Mouse with the hammer, stabbed Custer in the neck. Like, there had to be some ramifications, but it was a lot more violence, I think, than I was anticipating for the season. Now we have to move on to perhaps the most talked about situation from season 2. Cassie starts a secret relationship with Nate behind her best friend Maddie's back, and woo, Chile. It culminated in the epicness that was Lexi's freaking play. Girl, first, let's talk about Maddie and Cassie. Give me your thoughts on the breaking of all the girl codes and Cassie's emotional spiral.
I just feel like Cassie was just so dumb on so many levels, right? Like she was all over the place. And I think it had a lot to do with, again, young people dealing with very adult issues. The fact that she kept saying they were broken up. They were broken up. I'm like, even her mom knew what girl code was. Like, you don't date your best friend's ex ever.
Especially when she's still talking about him so much. This is still very fresh. They have a cycle of breaking up and getting back together. They were talking about the possibility of getting back together. He's fucking you in secret.
Where's your self-esteem, Cassie? Where is it?
When I tell y'all, this was so hard for me the first time I watched it because I was so hard on Cassie. I was judging her so harshly. Like, I could not wait for Maddie to find out what a treacherous ass bitch she was.
I don't know. They were hot together. I'm not going to lie. Her and Jacob, I was like, they're a good looking couple. I'm not going to lie.
I couldn't even see it for that. I had fire in my eyes every time I saw it because I was just like, this is so messed up. Like, I felt so bad for Maddie.
I think it's so funny because I didn't even look at it from that perspective. I was looking at it from the perspective of Cassie, Nate ain't it. He's never it. Like, this is not a prize. You need better self-esteem.
Definitely not a prize. Definitely not a prize. But I guess the reason why I looked at it that way is because Maddie and Cassie were so close. So it hurt me so much that this person that you were so close to, that you relied on, that you had such a bond with, that you felt like you could disclose everything to, would betray you on this level. Because you know you're hitting her where it would absolutely hurt her the most, right?
Yes,
and you're doing it really without a second thought. But then, as I said, that was my first watch. Okay. My second watch, I felt so much more sympathy for Cassie because I remembered what she had gone through in season one as well. Yeah. And the fact that she was coming off of a breakup with McKay, she had an abortion, all these things. And so I just saw it more to your point now is like, this is a dark path you're going down, especially with this particular individual.
It's reckless. And again, I feel like she's so young and she had no guidance. And so she was just making very bad decisions.
What was sad too is I feel like over the course of these 2 seasons, we see how much her looks and her body and her physicality is so ingrained in the way that everybody treats her and interacts with her, but particularly guys. Even in season 1 with the character of Daniel, when she finally rebuffs him because she is still basically with McKay, tells her, just so you know, no guy will ever be interested in you for anything but the way that you look. And if anyone tells you differently, they're lying to you. Imagine having a guy tell you something like that at such a young, impressionable age, right? There was a lot that Cassie probably already was dealing with internally. And then so to get like your probably worst insecurities validated so negative. Well, it's not negative. It is validating such a negative thought you probably have about yourself is what I really want to say. It was sad. She still wasn't shit, but it was sad.
No, but it's also it's like she's still figuring out how to navigate everything, you know? Especially when you develop a lot faster than to your point earlier about Kat. Your body is, you know, presenting one way, but emotionally you're probably that awkward 13-year-old, right? Not really understanding the power that your curves actually have on I mean, I know I'm not trying to make this about me, but I used to hide my body a lot, because if you're not ready for that attention, it is not fun. It's partially probably why I ultimately started gaining weight too, because it's like, don't look at me, my breasts are my own.
The over sexualization of girls at such a young age is so real and so disturbing. I even saw Cole Sprouse recently having to come out and said he's violently defensive of the way that people talk about the young female child stars from the Disney era because of how they were so overly sexualized from such a young age. He's like, we can't really criticize because you've never been in those shoes and had that kind of thrust on you when you're still a child. So to your point, I definitely agree with that with Cassie, but also let's be honest, she has daddy issues, right?
Yes.
Their father,
point. Yes.
Lexi and Cassie's father, again, struggles with addiction. Such a running theme in this show with struggles with addiction. It seemed like he went from drinking to possibly hardcore drugs before he disappeared completely from their lives. But they made it a point to kind of say Cassie sought out that love that she had lost, you know, from the love and adoration of her father.
Their weird relationship between Cassie and Nate, talking about, I'm going to protect you. And she's like, you know, do whatever you want to do with me. And I'm like, what is going on here? You are too young to give yourself to this boy. Like, I don't understand.
You know, two things about that. For one, why did Cassie's mother allow her to go leave and live with Nate for any period of time? Why did Nate's mother allow her to come and live? Again, the parents were given way too much leeway in this show. It was crazy. And then my second thought, when she said, you can dress me however you want, you can do it. I said, oh, she's perfect for Kanye. Because listen, that right there is his type. Like when she said, you can do whatever you want to me. You can dress me however you want. I want everybody to want to have sex with me, but you know that I'm yours. That's a psychology. That's a psychology.
It is.
And I'm no medical professional. I'm not diagnosing anybody. I'm just saying that was my thought in that moment. I was like, oh,
but you're
my gosh.
giving up so much of your power for what?
You're giving all of it. You're giving all of it. And I guess if we're going off of the version of Cassie we get in Lexi's play, it's because she feels like, well, at least I'm loved, or at least she has a feeling of being loved.
Oh, and that's an excellent point, because like most teenage relationships, do we really know what love is?
Especially Nate, because I don't think Nate has a healthy relationship with love in any capacity.
Not motherly, because that's usually what a lot of toxic guys lean on anyway.
And he said in season 1, I don't like my dad. I also don't like my mom.
Exactly. That's why he's not of God, because I don't see any love.
Ooh, girl. Oof. Wow. Okay. And finally, Lexi's play. Oof. The biggest moments of the series for me. It was a joy. Loved this play.
It was a joy. It was a mess. Oh my god.
It was such a mess. What I love too, that I got from one thing I love about Euphoria, is that every episode you get a behind the scenes and you get conversations with either Sam or a cast member or whatever. And in the particular scenes with the play, he mentioned that even as an audience, we don't know if what we're watching is really the play or the interpretation that the audience has of what they're seeing. Because for a minute, I was like, how does a high school play have such a high production value?
Yeah.
But then if you think about it from that perspective, it's like, well, as the audience, we're watching the reflection of something that they really enjoy. So we're watching it as being greater than possibly what it was. Does that make sense?
How are we supposed to gather that?
That's why you got to watch those end credits. That's why you got to watch those end credits. Because I live for that. Okay, anyway, did Lexi betray Cassie, her own sister, with this depiction?
Absolutely. Here's the deal. What Lexi did was extremely selfish, and it was to stroke her own ego. You know, you can't trust those quiet ones either, right? In the corner, taking all the notes, making all the observations, making all of her, putting what she believes, right, on you as your motivations and what have you. No, were some of them spot on? Absolutely.
Absolutely. As Fez says, sometimes people need to get their feelings hurt.
But at the end of the day, yes, it was Lexi's art. She is allowed to interpret her world from her perspective, her vantage point. But if you're going to have your friends and family as subject matter, you at least need to run it by them before it's for the world's consumption.
that's the betrayal, right? It's not that she chose to portray some of the worst moments in her sister's life on a stage for all her peers and probably a lot of the people in the town, possibly even Tom Holland. The point is that she never even had
absolutely there.
The point is that she never even had a conversation, right? And she had opportunities to have conversations, even in the bathroom. Yes. She had an opportunity to say, yes, I'm doing a play. It's going to be about our lives, X, Y, and Z. But Lexi knew what she was doing because she knew she wouldn't be able to do what she wanted to if she had those conversations. So to your point, it was selfish because she wanted it to be absolutely what she wanted it to be. And yeah, it was epic. So as a viewer, what was the biggest takeaway from you, or what was your favorite moment of the play?
Whew. My favorite moments were behind the scenes. Production chick, the black girl with the fro. I'm like, yes, get these actors in order. I loved it.
With her sweet little voice.
I know. She's what people call a baby voice. So, somebody said that I had a baby voice one time, and I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm laughing because that's what I was reminded of. Anyway, and Lexi being a complete tyrant behind the scenes, like, that was a joy because it seemed so out of character. But then if you think about it, she probably was never in her element, and this is her element.
I loved it as well. Maud Apatow, who portrays Lexi, said that this was based on real life events. She really was like this in a production that she was over. And so it was just kind of like, an exaggeration, probably to some certain extent. But I definitely enjoyed seeing Lexi in her zone, to your point, because we only seen Lexi as this background player. And then, this is her moment to kind of come into her own. She's even acting in this play, guys. She's not just behind the scenes. She's also an actress.
Yeah. But what I also enjoyed was actually having some insight on her relationship with Rue, because Rue seems untethered sometimes when we get her in the show, whereas when you're talking about Casey and Maddie and everybody else, they're very much, a part of the high school, environment. And it was just so heartfelt. And I really appreciated seeing where that friendship was, because obviously now it's almost non-existent. It's more so as like, well, she's somebody who I grew up with who will always,
it's just history. It's more about history.
Exactly. Nothing present is going on that's keeping us together. Our history is keeping this connection existing, right? So yeah, that was great.
I had that down too. I loved getting her perspective on Rue. And we see Rue appreciating it as well, because again, talking about kind of some of the behind the scenes discussions, this is really kind of the first time in the series that Rue gets to be reminded of who she was and not see herself only in like her worst light or her lowest moments. So it just reminded her of her kind of her humanity to a certain extent. And for me, it was the sheer audacity of Lexi ever putting on this play that I just like to depict real people in a high school play. Girl, you had some ovaries of steel. Okay. And also Ethan better be an actor in his life after this. Ethan played every role possible in this play, and he did it to perfection.
Yeah. Well, he had to put all his energy somewhere after Kat just dumped him over some stupid stuff.
That was such a gross scene. I really hated it. It felt like such a step back for Kat and her discovery of herself. The football player training scene in particular that Nate walked out on was wild. That choreography was crazy. But I saw
again, all that internal anger was so just, he's insidious. Like, I'm like, what is he wanting to do? And then obviously he lashes out on Casey, who went mad.
That scene at the end of episode 7 where Cassie is literally breathing hard into the door and you just see her eyes, like That was beautiful. That was so well shot because you could feel the tension going into the finale. It was so well done. But I saw a meme that I thought was so true about all the folks outraged about Will's slap. Going back to that one more time, I guarantee you, if they're fans of this show, they were so satisfied watching Maddie slap the shit out of Cassie on stage. She
Absolutely.
even slammed her head against the wall. So like,
I mean, people were applauding the fact that Maddie didn't break a nail. She was icing her foot because she hurt herself on the way to the stage to smack the shit out of Cassie.
Well, everybody was the friend behind Kat talking about, yes, beat her ass. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was out of my seat. I was out of my seat when I first watched this episode. I was out of my seat. It was such a build up. It was such a build up to it. So Rue ends the season clean and with some clarity, but we didn't get resolution on the drug dealer Lori situation, which bugs me because there's no way Lori is just going to let her go.
Not at all. And I have to admit, it did not register immediately that Lori was going to, give her up as collateral. Like, I did not gather that. I knew she wasn't being kind to be kind, but I didn't know that she was really going to have this child handcuffed for whatever purposes.
I also realized we didn't get McKay's reaction to the Nate Cassie situation. So I am curious about that if we get into that into season 3, because both McKay and Kat, who were much more prominent in season 1, really kind of took back seats this season. And I think that was obviously to make room for some of these storylines and some of these newer characters like Elliot, but curious to see if they get a little bit more screen time as we move into season 3, because season 3 has been confirmed. Laura, what are you hoping to see in season 3 of Euphoria?
Ashley, I'm saying this with all sincerity. I don't know. I don't know, because it's not like this show is full of hope, right? It's going to be stressful. It's going to be dramatic. Somebody's going to hurt and cry and fight. So I don't know. I hope to see a better version of Rue. I know everything is not going to be sunshine and roses, but I need to start to see growth. I need to start to see some layers being pulled back that helps her to come out of this situation she's in, because otherwise I don't know how they're going to keep her alive. And I don't know how we're going to continue down this path as viewers, right? So, well, that's a great
I'd love
point,
to see that,
because I don't have much hope in Rue. And I know that sounds awful, but after her relapse in this season and the journey we went with her this season, I don't know. I don't know
either. I'm just hopeful.
I appreciate your hope. I appreciate it.
Well, because to me, that's the only way that I can stick with a series. Me personally, is I need to see character growth. That's what I live for. I hate stagnant. So, if we don't see Rue start to get better, again, what's the alternative? Are you going to kill off your main character? Probably not. So I just don't know if I'll be able to stick with the show if they don't. And then also, man, we got to see what's about to happen with these high school kids in their senior year. This is about to be their senior year of high school. What else can possibly happen to these kids? I keep saying this every time I talk about this show. Y'all have lived y'all whole life already at the age of like 17, 18. What else are you going to do in adulthood?
They've lived more life than me. And I'm older than they are.
Definitely lived more life than me.
Because I think the one thing that I have a hard time with this show sometimes too is the aesthetic of it all. It seems very stagnant. It looks like they live in a neighborhood that probably had its heyday, in the 70s, 80s or whatever, because all the homes are very retro looking in some ways. But these people aren't wealthy. The only wealthy person, to your point earlier, is Cal and Nate's family. So is college within reach for some of these kids?
That's a great question.
What are their aspirations outside of the dramatics of high school?
Well, we know that Jules wants to go to art school. We know that Maddie wants to leave town. Now, by what means she's going to leave town, I'm not sure. I don't necessarily envision college for Maddie. I think she may try some other avenue. But with like Cassie, absolutely no idea. Nate, I'm not sure he's going to survive high school. McKay, obviously, we saw go on to college, but we still have the lack of resolution on his football career. Because remember, that was a huge identity crisis he was having.
Yes.
So, what's going to happen with these kids? I'm still curious. I still want to see what's going to happen with Kat, what's going to happen with all of them this next season. But again, I'm optimistic, at least. I'm optimistic that we will see some positivity in a season 3. And Fez better be alive. Okay, that's the last thing I have. Fez better be alive. Sam. All right, Delora, unless you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the class.
Go Zendaya.
Get that Emmy, baby. That is it for our recap of Euphoria. I hope that wasn't too painful because, again, I know it was some heavy subject matter, but
really quick, I saw the Ellen interview with the actress who played Cassie, and she talked about how she was excited to show her the show to her parents and grandparents, and she said her grandma was like, well, you got the best tits in Hollywood.
There you go, grandma. There you go. And guess what? I used to have those too. It's probably the only other thing Sydney didn't say. Grandma used to have.
She was like, I know because I know where they came from.
Exactly. All right, Delora, what you got for hidden gems this week, girl?
Well, we both have the same one.
You know what? Is this our first overlap? I think on the week.
I think so.
Hilarious.
I think so.
We did good. We made it almost to 100 episodes.
We both have Moonshot. It's a new sci-fi rom-com available on HBO Max. Came out, like I said, new. It came out this month. Or the end of March. I'm sorry, March 31st. It stars our girl from To All the Boys I Loved Before. Check out that recap, please. It's Lana Condor and Cole Sprouts. And it's very light. It's very cute. Is it the best romantic comedy ever? Probably not, but I appreciate the original idea of it all. I was very invested to see what this world had to offer since they were going off to Mars.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was the premise for me that reeled me in. Obviously, I love Lana and I love Cole from other projects that they've done, Cole Sprouse, but it was the premise of like, why are they going to Mars? What is the whole point of this? Like, what's happening in this kind of otherworldly, film? And then I also loved that Lana was this very brilliant young woman who had such insight about the world that even her kind of peers between her boyfriend and Cole didn't really have and didn't really understand. And her journey throughout the movie really, like, I really enjoyed, as well as Cole's, because Cole kind of had to come to a realization about what was important, what was really important. I think it's important when I watched it. One of the biggest messages I took, I guess, and then I'm done, is you can't feel a hole within yourself just because you switch locations. Geography,
I was going to point that out. Yes.
Is not going to feel internal voids.
Because the same lesson is going to creep its way back up if you don't actually learn it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there was a few things that I enjoyed about it. To your point, it was not my favorite, even YA rom-com, because even To All the Boys I Loved Before, her chemistry with...
That is what I was going to say. Yeah. Her chemistry
with Noah Centineo was fire.
Fire. Okay. With Cole, it was cute. So,
what's your second one?
It is political, but I'm bringing it up because she did such a great job talking about the slap. I'm talking about MSNBC's The Cross Connection with Tiffany Cross. I'm a huge fan. First of all, Joy and Reed used to have this hour on Saturday and Sunday. And then when she got promoted to being the first Black woman in primetime cable news, her show was filled by two hosts, Tiffany Cross and Jonathan K. Park, on Sunday. But the thing about,
I had to see Jonathan in person at my alma mater speak. He was so good. He was so good.
Yeah. And I bet you he was impeccably dressed as well.
Of course he was. And it was during the Trump era. So my guy had a lot to say.
Oh, yes. Well, what I love about Tiffany is that she's not afraid to be a voice for Black people, specifically Black women. And, you know, she kind of had a kitchen table talk with Yvette Nicole Brown and Michael Harriet about the slap. And it was done well. And I really appreciate it. And she interviewed Will Packer before the Oscars. Like, so she has elements within culture in her show, even though it is primarily a political show. So I just wanted to highlight her and say that I love her. I'm a huge fan. I love her camaraderie with Jason, who is another commentator that I really enjoy. So that's my hidden gem. How about you, Ashley?
All right. My second one is Lux Listings Sydney Season 2, Amazon Prime. Arguably my favorite real estate show other than Selling Sunset, Avi. My main three are back. Gavin, Deline, and Simon, with a fourth realtor added to the mix, Miss Monica. I'm mad. I've started this already because they only dropped the first 3 episodes. Now the remainder will be serial releases on Fridays. But man, I get all the luxury real estate porn I can handle. Plus, I get the actual business, right? There's a lot of these real estate reality shows such as Selling Sunset that are more about the drama between the cast than it is about the real estate game and business. And as I said, when I first watched season 1, I even get to see real estate auctions. I get to see kind of some of the inner workings. I live for a good real estate show. And so Lux Listing Sydney season 2 on Amazon Prime. Check it out. I'm even now following y'all on Instagram, by the way, because I'm just getting to that level of obsession. But anyway, those are my 2 hidden gems for this week as well. And Delora, we will be back as always for our headlines and hot topics show this week. And I am so curious to see what these streets have for us this week. So
I know this is what we get for complaining about nothing happening.
This is our fault, guys. This is our fault. Guys, thank you as always for listening to us. As Delora said, you know, we're almost at episode 100, if you can believe it. So,
and we have a special guest.
Yes,
we're not going to reveal yet, but stay tuned, please. Tell your friends.
It's coming very soon. So we will see you guys then. Again, follow us on social media at ReCappin Podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.